you for. If you knew the whole story, Dave and I went through a lot to try and put this together, and so and of course all of you coming, and Mom and everybody. So I am going to move at a fairly good pace, but I'll get it all in. This is about discrete trial training to assist competency to stand trial restoration. Now, the reason, what am I doing here? I started out in forensic psychology. I worked at a forensic psychiatric hospital for a number of years, and this is one of the main things that we did, and I'll get into more explanation of it later. However, while I was there, I did realize that this was partly an educational and a reinforcement problem and a skill acquisition issue. That in order for someone to be able to go to court, you need certain skills, and that's essentially what the law is saying, which I'll get into that in a little bit. So that's a pretty quick intro. But because of my time at the state hospital, I became interested in applied behavior analysis, and that led me to be a BCBA and led me to be I'm in a doctoral program now, and this is part of my ever-growing dissertation project is competency to stand trial, if I can get things going. So the first code word, I know you just did one, but here's another one. Just put in competency, send it right to me. Competency is going to be the code word for all the CE seeking people. Just kind of put that in there. I'll leave that up there a minute. So I went on to be a BCBA, and I worked at some different places, and I will speak a little bit about the potential remote aspect about this as well. But now I'm trying to combine the two areas. That's become my mission. So for this webinar, understanding of competency to stand trial and how it is of importance to those with disabilities in the criminal justice system. I'll go over the literature. We have an expanding issue with this. We have a lot less of the large state psychiatric facilities. There's questions about how well outpatient care is covering the needs of people with different psychiatric conditions, with autism. And then those people, because in part due to those lack of services, they're getting caught up in the criminal justice system and could receive what's called a competency commitment. So discrete trial training, teaching, whatever you want to call it, could be of use in the CST cases. And the third objective is identify one ethical and one practical issue in using ABA techniques to assist in cases of CST. So, you'll get all that in spades here in a second. Okay, the legal concept of trial competency presumes a sufficient present ability to consult with his or her lawyer with a reasonable degree of rational understanding and similar rationality to discern and weigh the consequences of charges against the alleged defendant. And by the way, I try to reach, this is from this book, Behavioral Forensics. He's got some good, very much in the assessment realm. Douglas Rubin, I'd love to meet with this guy. I tried to track him down, but it's a pretty good book, Behavioral Forensics, where he talks a little bit about competency. And for a while, I would go around and almost imply that I was the only one in behavior analysis that was interested in this area. That's not true. As I've gone to other conferences, I've seen other people that have worked with clients in this same area. So very briefly, we have Dusky v. United States, which was the court ruling, says the defendant understands charges against him or her and is able to assist in his or her in the legal defense process. Those are the two prongs. There's also what's called Drope versus Missouri a few years later, about a decade or so later, that basically is saying, their threshold for raising this issue doesn't necessarily have to be very high. So the person could be able to care for themselves, do things that maybe would not get them put on another kind of psychiatric commitment. But if they're having difficulties in these areas, the issue of competency can be raised. This is a good article on it, an overview of competence to stand trial, Stephen Hodge, in the Indian Journal of Psychiatry. It goes into the legal concept of competence to stand trial has ancient roots in some kind of mentalistic thinking is where it originates from. A competent defendant is a requirement of the criminal justice system because it reflects the interests related to the dignity of the process, the accuracy of adjudication, which is the court process, and a respect for the autonomy of the defendants. Criminal defendants are there to make decisions, on their own welfare. That's why this matters. In the United States, legal decisions have established the contours of the requirements related to competent participation in adjudication. Forensic psychiatrists have operationalized the requirements for assessment purposes. They have a certain list of things that they have to ask, and the defendant would then have to be able to answer. And if they don't have the skill to answer those questions, then they may remain incompetent. And it's my contention that if the person can be found competent to stand trial, whatever the situation, it's in everyone's best interest that this does take place. So this article, a survey, and if you have, I'm moving a little fast, but if there's things you want to ask, jump right in. I see the chats very quickly, but you can also take yourself off mute and ask. Survey of national trends in psychiatric patients found incompetent to stand trial. Reasons for the reinstitutionalization of people with serious mental illness in the United States. Reinstitutionalization. There was a deinstitutionalization, and now they're out and they're being found, get in trouble, and they're found incompetent to stand trial, and they be reinstitutionalized. They end up back in the psychiatric hospital. So recent information indicates the number of forensic patients in state hospitals has been increasing, largely driven by an increase in patients referred to state hospitals and is incompetent to stand trial. The surveys indicates that most states are facing this issue. Most of the states are facing this issue, and it's related to insufficient services in the community. And this is from 2011. Pirelli, Goat Diner, and Zapf. And I went to John Jay College. A meta-analytic review of competency to stand trial research. And there was 68 studies between 1967 and 2008 that compared competent and incompetent defendants on a number of these different variables. So the most robust findings were that defendants diagnosed with a psychotic disorder were approximately 8 times more likely to be found incompetent than defendants without, and the likelihood of being found competent was approximately double for unemployed defendants as compared to those employed. The likelihood of being found incompetent was also double for defendants with a previous psychiatric hospitalization compared to those without. So we are talking about the chronically mentally ill, or those that have those kinds of conditions and have a record for it. Now, I went on a little campaign to find people that I could find participants for a study I'm going to tell you about. But it was through that, then, I got this, somebody mailed this to me, the APA monitor on psychology. And lo and behold, they've got this was from June 2022. They've got a special section on incompetency cases. It's become a hot topic. So a growing number of people with serious mental illness are getting entangled in the legal system, often for minor crimes. And we did certainly see that at the hospital. Psychologists are figuring out how to get them essential medical care instead. We had a guy that was in there for stealing a blanket from a Salvation Army drop-off box. They caught him, and he got caught up in a misdemeanor and was found incompetent. And we had him for over a year. He wouldn't have spent that much time in anything if he'd gotten convicted of that. One guy was a case of mistaken identity. The police saw him. When he sees the police, he gets running. They chased after him, and he's arrested for resisting arrest and found incompetent, and ends up in the hospital. So it becomes pretty important stuff, and he was one of the people that was difficult to help restore to competency due to communication, cognitive abilities, things like that. So for this one, it's got a set of articles on the nationwide problem, and they explore some of the alternatives to the current system because it is becoming such a pressing issue. And I've seen a lot of this, the very things that they talk about the lack of services, about the increasing use of the psychiatric system to deal with criminal defendants. And there's a whole series of other articles that are in there. It was really, it was quite a hitting pay dirt when I came across that monitor on psychology. So there's going to be a few more things on that. And I just saw that. Yeah, Kim, it's in North Dakota. I did speak about it there. For those of you that remember that, and I know it's become an issue there. They got a small section where they get a good little concise description of competency to stand trial. And it's usually going to be the public defender that will raise it. Other court players will raise the issue of competency when they feel the need to. And make the distinction. Insanity is not competency. Insanity is your state. Much more sticky issue, I think. Refers to the defendant's state of mind at the time of the crime. Well, we're dealing with them as of right now, if the trial were to take place right now. Okay, so I've got a proposed little study here that I'm going to go over with you, that I've made some progress on, and I hope it's just a sampling of what could be, because I think this issue could be huge, and that's why I wanted to have this meeting with all of you. We're dealing with 3 different elements, 2 verbal operants and a matching task. And I hope that those of you that are practicing behavior analysts or psychologists or whatever you like to call yourselves, behaviorists, this is the same kind of techniques that you're very familiar with applied to an area where it's not commonly applied. I'm going to use a multiple baseline design, multiple baseline across behaviors. The behaviors are these 3 elements, okay, of matching, tacting, and the intraverbal skills. And it's going to be on the courtroom terms. So the reason I believe it's relevant is the defendants, clients will be found incompetent. They may not know the terminology. They may not be able to express themselves sufficiently well in a psychiatric interview or to their attorney in the process. And this is helping them develop those skills. Discrete trial training, I think there's some familiarity with this, a given opportunity to give a response. So we have some examples, flashcards, answering a prompted question, pointing to a sample color or shape, cutting up instruction to cut up vegetables, or identifying vegetables, tacting them. In this study, these same kinds of discrete trial techniques are used to learn terms relevant to the court. Okay. So it ends up being a session. This can vary quite about 10-15 minutes for each participant. And we go through these different areas. It's usually about 7 items. I've got them divided up into a data sheet by a set. So at a session, it'll be 7 tacting items, about 7 intraverbal questions, about 7 matching concepts. So the baseline, we'll just go through them and inquire on the elements. Match this, tack this, answer about this. So the intervention, we're going to use some techniques of errorless learning and prompting hierarchy as needed. Where are we at? Okay, I think we're doing okay. So here they are, the 20 courtroom terms that I'm working on. You'll notice the ones with the little stars, excuse me. Um, these are ones where they are only intraverbal. So we don't have a visual representation as in matching and tacting. So these kinds of concepts, alibi, felony, the misdemeanor, sentence, and verdict, are only talked about. The others have a visual stimuli, which we'll show you here in a little bit. I don't have, I have defense attorney. I don't have public defender, those kinds of concepts. I don't have. Now, as far as why I chose these were the same terms. We kind of do what we're used to. These are the same terms that we would use in our testing for incompetent defendants when we're in the hospital. A little bit of variation on them. And these are kind of the things that I'm predicting that a defendant would need to know to minimally work with his attorney. And we go through a process of how they can identify them. So, but it's a good question of what terms to specifically use. They're commonly used by psychiatrists and judges in competency evaluation. So here we have a little matching task. So we'll have, this guy, a judge up here. This is to represent the prosecutor. This is to represent a witness. As a matching exercise, we can ask which of the above three cards matches this card. The participant will have an opportunity to answer to match. If correct, we will move on. If the answer is answered incorrectly, then a hierarchy of prompting will be implemented after shuffling the top three cards. So I've shuffled them now. The top three cards with the prosecutor on the left, the witness in the center, and the matching judge at the right. The card to be matched is now in the closest proximity to its twin. The judge card, and this is the prompting after he's gotten it incorrect. The judge card is prompted by moving the object closest to the card to be matched. Match is once again the instruction given. Gestural physical prompts are subsequent options used using a hierarchy. Okay. Dave?
Tim, we've got a question, and do you want to do a code exercise right now?
Oh, I'm coming up on my.
Okay.
Coming
We
up
got
on
a
the
question in the chat from Emma Dugan. Why did you choose these terms specifically?
Yeah, those terms, they were the same ones that we would train. We would have testing on this and like a legal education class. So it's not, I haven't, it would be a good thing to research which words are the deficits, but it's kind of a legacy to the past of picking up right where we left off when we do what we called legal education classes there in the hospital. There it was a slight adjustment, but and we found like some people would use some of the terms, but needed help. Like instead of the cop in the courtroom, it was the bailiff and things like that. So it's habit in part.
Okay.
And matching
Oh,
would be if you can put matching into the and just send it. Here they come. Yep. Send it right to me, and that will be our next code word, which is a sign that we're moving along. So, any more questions up to this point?
So I also do competency restoration with clients. Um, do you think that those words that you use could be changed to ones that they are exposed to more, like in my courtroom, for instance?
Yeah, I mean, the ability to vary and to be versatile is certainly there. So, as long as, and it could be, training for their attorney that they would say, the typist is the court reporter, or the guy on your team is the defense attorney. So right now we're starting out with some difficult terminology, but certainly that kind of adjustment and maybe that kind of shaping could be a part of the program. I'm open to it. Okay.
Tim,
Go ahead.
this is Maria. I have a question. So when you do your training, you said that you have I'm trying to find I took a screenshot of yours that you have like seven tacking items and then 7 interverbal, then 7 matching concepts.
Right.
Do you you're aware of the competency restoration modules, right?
Yeah, with some of them, there's different ones, but
Okay, because after I had spoke with you at that conference and I made a bunch of the visuals and things like that, and the individual I was taken through on this did very well on the matching, but a lot of the terms, you can't find a picture for them, and that's where I just saw the individual just shut down. It was too much for them, and then I start seeing a lot of escape maintain behavior. So I'm almost wondering now, I failed them. Maybe I should have mixed up the matching with just a few of those each time so that, kind of like the high P, he was successful with, yeah.
So yeah, for those 7 kind of abstract terms, that where I'm thinking that we could go on this, if I'm responding effectively. Well, with the ones that are not those abstract terms like alibi, felony, then you have a visual match. And then you could present, once they've gotten good at matching and tacting, then you could ask the question and then present the visual stimuli. For things like alibi, felony, verdict, we may have to work on some concept analysis. And that's where, okay, a verdict is a decision. It's a decision at the end of the trial. It's a decision made by whom? Judge or the jury, Sentence is a decision after the trial. Who's it made by? Will go. I mean, there where it gets complicated, we can say, it's a decision made by the judge. A plea is a decision. When is it made? It's made before the trial. Who's it made by? It's made by the defendant. So I think some of the kind of the Markle type concept analysis might be in order for some of the more sophisticated kind of terms. And I am going to get into more of that, of what I'm finding when I'm running through these cards with the people that I'm working with now. So is that? I hope that's a sufficient answer for the time being.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. And this is an example. This is like what we were just talking about. So the intraverbal verdict, the 2-sided flashcards will have the term on one side and the definition on the opposite sided. You may present definition side and ask the participant to identify the then correct term. So your basic flashcards. And this is kind of of the basic study, using a visual representation of it, the tacting, the matching, we do the baseline, we do the intervention. Was not able to do generalization initially, but we'll have a generalization probe toward the end, and there I'll have like videos of like the old Perry Mason show video clips, and you can just have somebody will walk in and say, who's the guy that just walked in? That's the bailiff. They'll have a conversation. Who's the guy that spoke last? That was the judge. And that'll be a set of generalization probes once we've gone through tacting and matching. The Slater method, yeah, is talked about in one of those previous articles. Yeah. We have used also what we call the CAST MR as an assessment, which is similar principles. So here we have a matching set, portion of the matching set data sheet that we would go ahead and put our data on probe section, and then we can go as far as we need to. But if we just went 5 and we got 80%, so for pluses, plus, then we can go ahead and say that they're getting at 80% in the study. So where I'm at now, and I'm glad I got enough of time, I'm going to stop sharing, and I'm going to travel for a little bit. And so bear with me, and if you have, well, we're going through the darkness, so you can't see how messy the house is for now. We'll go down here and have a little demonstration. I'll see if I have to remove. I'm gonna go on mute in case there's. How well can you see these images here, the cards that are on the table? Can they be seen? Go ahead and just you can take yourself off mute and say that they're being seen or not seen.
They are being seen.
I see them.
Okay.
I can't read them. I can see them.
Yeah, you won't be able to need to read them. Gina's going to help me out with a little demonstration here. So, and I'm glad that my leash here reaches all the way to the computer. So, okay, so we'll be here. We've shuffled the cards about. And I'm going to go ahead and present a card. Match. Okay, so she's actually gone to the subpoena card. I wouldn't say that right there, but I'm going to, let's, do some reshuffling. And I'll positional prompt the matching card closer to her and hopefully make it a little easier. Match. Pick them up. Judge, you got it. You got the judge. So I've done a little bit of correcting there to make it a little bit easier. Now, if I have one of the court reporter, I could say tact. I don't know if you can hear, but what's this?
Court reporter.
Court reporter, you're absolutely right. So she's successfully tacted. That was the court reporter. Then if I have intraverbal, I'd say a person who answers questions about what they know in a criminal case. Okay, well, the defendant is going to be the person that's in trouble. If somebody is up there speaking about what they know in a criminal case, that's going to be what we call a witness. So who's the person who answers questions about what they know in a criminal case? A witness. And I think that'll be a common answer because some of them have elements. That's the concept analysis. It's the witness. Great job. And now I'm going to give you your table back too. So, it's like, I appreciate you can open that back up. Okay, so that was thank you. That was a little demonstration of what we had and the kind of thing that I'm doing right now. Now, I'm going to get into a little bit about what it was to put this kind of study together and where I'm at now, and that's going to require me to share once again. And here we're right back where we left off. Do you have any questions at this point?
Do you use this for individuals just with like developmental disabilities, or are you also using this for like SMI clients?
Well, where I'm at right now is I went to, I was just going to get into that because my original plan for the study was to go to the same state hospital with actual defendants who were already found incompetent to stand trial. Went there, had several meetings. It was approved by the IRB. And then because of another wave of COVID, they had severe staff shortages. And the medical director wrote back and said, nope, we can't do it. We've just, we have National Guardsmen called out, and we just don't have the staffing to permit something like this. So I went to another state hospital much farther south, and I was ultimately told the same thing. Well, then finally, at a place that remains going to remain undisclosed, I got approval at a center treatment for autism, and the couple clients that they've got for me, I think were ideal. And the only way we could do it is, well, this is very Dave Feeney-esque, but over Zoom meetings. So it was remotely done. So this can be remotely done. And it has been kind of slow progress, but and we got into the baseline data. The one client is just soared through it. He loved it. He could be his own attorney, as far as I'm concerned. The other, he was able to do matching, worked out well. Tacting, having some trouble, and then a lot of trouble in the intraverbal realm is where we're at with that particular in the baseline part. And then we have the potential to get more clients from there. But fortunately, at the Autism Center, that's where we've been able to have some success. But I see it applicable regardless of diagnosis. There's a lot of clientele that would be suitable for an intervention like this. And ethical issues for using ABA in these cases. And I'm perfectly willing to hear out from the audience if you think there's more to this, and I think that there probably is, because we are kind of stepping into an ethical area maybe that we had not been in before, a setting that we're not commonly in. I sometimes get asked, are they really competent? So you go in and you help them understand the terms and they can communicate. And the idea being, well, can they really work with their attorney? And I would say if it was just a matter of learning the terms or even being able to demonstrate the concepts, that isn't necessarily all there is to being competent. They could be well versed in these areas and still be incompetent for other reasons. So, for example, if you have a psychotic delusion that the judge framed the whole case against you, and that's not really the case, that would be an example of someone still being incompetent even though they're able to learn the skills. However, if it's a matter of that question to me is almost along the lines of you work with children or adults to learn terms. Well, have they really learned it, or have you just trained them? Competent is competent, so it will not be simply a matter of being able to learn the terms. They still have to go before a psychiatrist at the hospital, and or possibly a psychologist. However, and be reviewed. However, what we would be able to do with behavior analytic work is to show progress, so that they were not able to understand. They could only understand 3 of the 20 terms. Now they can tact 19 of the 20 terms. They did not know any of the intraverbal terms successfully. Now they know 50% of the intraverbal terms, which could be a very useful instrument to show in their case, to like present to a judge or a psychiatrist. We would not be there opining them as competent. We would be there to help show progress and behavioral skill development. And that goes to the idea, like, should we be involved in cases like this? And it has to do, I think that this question is, is it really in their best interest? Well, unfortunately, the grip of the criminal justice system, it can go all kinds of ways, and that varies quite a bit by jurisdiction, how these different states handle these cases. Some are prone to simply drop the charges, which to me is logical legally if they have not been found competent. In the state of Indiana, they kind of get around that by just going ahead and putting them on a regular commitment, under the idea that, well, if they're this incompetent, they should have been on a commitment anyway, and they can usually find something about their skill level or dangerousness to themselves or something like that. However, I fear it could end up being a long-term process, regardless of what the crime is. And if the crime is serious, then it's kind of turned into using the psychiatric system and the competency commitments as a means of incarcerating people, instead of going through the process where they actually are in court and have their day in court. So where I'm at with it now is, for these kinds of cases, I haven't seen one where we shouldn't proceed with it if we can help. Should we touch the criminal justice system with a 29.5-foot pole? In other words, our involvement in this are really being helpful. And I would say, carefully we'll approach it in the ways that we can help, and show data to show skill improvement or behavioral improvement where we can. This is not something to cure all the ills with the criminal justice system. I wish something could do that. But there's a lot of literature, not just for competency, for juvenile justice, over the many years, and things that were put in place of contingency management programs that have been helpful, at least shown by what's been written over many years, but for different reasons, economic reasons and political, and just changes in the times, these things aren't implemented anymore. However, it was just last year, I got called from a place in Illinois that they were looking for hiring BCBAs for their, in 6 different counties, for their juvenile justice program, which I think is ideal. So I think we can be of great benefit to the criminal justice system when we're using the techniques that we're good at, and we're making a strong case for what we want to do and why we want to do it. Anybody else have questions about ethical? I ran through that quickly, but ethical issues using ABA in these kind of cases. Whatever you want to ask is fine. Dave?
Tim, I know nothing about this at all. It's really fascinating. Are there any contingencies to motivate people to feign or pretend to be incompetent?
Yes, most certainly there are. And that's a big, that's ever present on people's mind is when they, in a psychiatric facility, they say malingering.
Of course, yeah. But like many people, I've seen, classic films like One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, where, that's about malingering and pretending to be pretending to be incompetent. Uh, if a system like yours encountered someone malingering to be incompetent, how might you detect that, or would you, or is that not even relevant?
There's actually, they've even developed full psychological tests on this, or portions of other well-known tests. I'll tell you in a second what I think is most of the time the remedy. But however, if you see in the data like unusual patterns of acquisition, like they acquire it at one point and then don't at another, I think that could be useful data in something, or they acquire certain skills rapidly, like the interverbal skills and not the matching. That could be useful data. Um, but from what I've seen, or at least the malingering cases that we knew we could detect, if they hung around with really mentally ill people, after a while they just couldn't take it anymore. They put on their act, which to me was usually just obvious malingering. But when they got around the real thing, they were ready to give it up. Just except like in a few extreme cases where they're really, they're really in a lot of trouble and they're really motivated to get out of it. So I don't think we'll ever overcome the problem of malingering. But I do think now that you mention that, I do think the data that we collect could be. I can see several ways it could be useful in that scenario. Okay.
What are the routes of entry into doing this kind of work?
I'm gonna just put these up here since you asked that. Yeah. Well, like I said, I mean, when I was out in North Dakota, I met some people. They're on here right now that they've been involved in this. And there's some that are, that misdemeanor cases that are in the community, and they're not all inpatient work. So for me, my route was to work for the forensic psychiatric hospital. Um, Others maybe, and we did. It is possible a behavior analyst could consult at a facility like that. I don't know of states that are asking for behavior analysts, as those are practitioners, BCBAs or other things, to help with competency cases. However, there's certainly a need for them, in my view, at the large psychiatric facilities. So, and they are consulted there, like I said. So I think there's several avenues to it. So I ask, how can we become behavior analysts, become involved in CST? I'm trying to make that happen when we've got more research, when we got more involvement that shows we can be useful. It's just like everything else, like in the school system, in the health professions, in OBM and business. Once we show we can help, then they might be seeking us out if they knew we existed. So, but most of the psychiatric care that I've seen and that I've read about is still very medical model. It's very much go to a doctor, find a medical treatment. They're not thinking of it in even psychiatric, non-forensic psychiatric cases. They're thinking of treating the disease. They're not thinking of behavioral improvement, skill acquisition, SDs that can be implemented. And if we have more research and development, I hope we can get that changed. And that goes to like the second part of that: best way to communicate these concepts to those who are professionals in the criminal justice fields. I think the better research, the better involvement, the better position we'll be in. And you can put discrete then as your last, the very last one. We can put discrete on there. There's a lot to this, and I hope I was able to answer at least some of your questions, but there's a lot more to be had. I'd like to work on development. I know they've done this in some of the. I just was at a meeting the other day. Use of computer programs that can be developed to do the same kind of thing and can be sent to facilities or outpatient areas to work on. There's the references, and that's where you can contact me, and I'll put my phone number here in the chat. I'm going to stop sharing. Oh, we're almost out of time. Hey, that was great. What else do we have? Dave, anything?
Emma Dugan had a great comment. I'm going to dramatic read it. I got my involvement through the county, and we're contracted through the circuit court.
Cool. I'm going to have to talk to you, Emma.
Emma, do you want to tell us more about that?
Yeah, so I work for the county community mental health provider, and as such, we're contracted through the circuit court to do community restoration to help with competency restoration. And so that's kind of where I get to use my skill set with all of this and kind of do that intersection of this between.
Okay. She kind of cut off to the end, but yeah. Yeah, I will get with you, Emma, so I can learn more, because that's pretty important. Get a specific contract going.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, we, I believe, speaking for Tim, we're looking to do more of these more frequently upcoming throughout 2023, 2022, and 2023. So we want to keep an eye out for people who might in turn be presenters at future events of this.
Okay. All right.
Great.
That's all we got, folks. Thank you so much for coming. It's been a great evening.